All right, today we are going to change tires and balance them, and we're going to do that on a BMW R1200RT. This is a 2014 model, and we're going to do it all with home tools. Let's quickly talk about the tools you need for this job, and let's come down here first. First of all, some sort of tire changer. You could use a test tire changer. You could use, I think you can get them at Harbor Freight. This one is the Rabaconda. It is overkill. And it's a little expensive, but really does the job quite well. Next thing you need, I use rubbing alcohol to prep the wheel when I'm going to put on the wheel weights. You're going to, of course, need some wheel weights. These are the Motion Pro wheel weights. These are silver, match the rim. You're going to need some tape. Just using a little bit of painter's tape to hold the wheel weights, temporarily hold wheel weights on while you're doing the balancing. And then this little contraption right here is for balancing. Now I've made this tool to hold the wheel, and there's I know this is kind of a, I'm not using my machine at the office, so I wanted to just create this stuff from home. These are some pieces of PVC, and I'll go over what exactly is included in that. And to make it a very, very tight fit, I use some duct tape so the wheel goes over this, it stays in place and doesn't move. There's other ways of doing this. That's just the way I chose to do it because I had stuff laying around and wanted to make it happen quickly. You're going to need some sort of glue removing. This is Goo Gone, and that helps you get the old glue off of the wheel from where the old wheel weights are, and some kind of scraping tool. This scraping tool, which is plastic, came with this kit, which is kind of cool. You need to let that sit on there for 5 or 10 minutes, and then it comes off pretty quickly. What is the next thing? Some Windex. You're going to use the Windex to lube up the wheel. Normally, I would be using a tire soap, but Windex works just fantastic, and we'll show you that. You're going to obviously need a tire pressure gauge, a valve core remover tool, and then you're going to need some different size things. So you're going to need a 13mm socket. You need a 25 T25, a T40, and a T50. I use a T50 as a socket type with an extension and a ratchet. And we'll see how those are used. I'm using 3 tire tools to make it happen, and a couple of rags. What else do we need? We do need a tire balancer. Here is the tire balancer here that I'm using. It's a Bike Master. Pretty cheap, pretty easy. It does static balancing. That's what they use at the racetrack, so it works perfect for me. And then for BMW, you're going to need a couple of extra things, because the BMW hub, let's take a look at that. We can take a look here. I'm sorry, it's going to get a little crooked down here, but see how large that hole is. That doesn't fit on that or that small thing. So what I've got here, let me show you guys. Just went down to the hardware store and I picked some PVC pipe fittings. This is a 2-inch PVC pipe fitting. It's got a 3/4 inch insert that slides into that, and that has a 1 1/4 inch on the inside, so that slides right into this piece, and that'll be a good size for the axle. I picked up a couple more. I had to bore out a little bit more just to give it a little height, so that this can go down over the top of that. Shoot the other way, so that way, and then that'll go over the axle, hold it in place. I've done the same thing for the bike, the balancer, and then this piece can go in here with this larger piece, and then I'll hold the rim on so that I can do a balance on there. So those are some things you're going to need to have. Depending on, I can't really tell you the size because it depends on the size of the bar you have for your balancer. I just dropped that. The size of the bar for what size hole you need here, but that is the outer diameter of this one is the 1 1/4 that fits into, let me go back over here, the inner diameter here, so I can slide it into this, and this is a 2-inch on the outer diameter, and that is the size of that wheel. Let's get started. First thing you want to do, remove the side bags. Just going to make it a lot easier to work with. We're going to need to remove that exhaust pipe, and having the side bags off certainly helps. So let's get to that. Once your side bags are off, we want to remove this heat shield from the exhaust right here. There are 3 little bolts. This one right here is a T25, T25, T25. This one has a little washer, so keep that one separate. And then the T40 to remove this bolt here. And then just underneath this shield is a 13 millimeter socket that you're going to loosen up to be able to get the exhaust off. Let me show you that really quick. All right, we've got our tin off right here, and this is the 13 millimeter socket. It's going to go right on there. We're going to loosen this up, and we're going to take this bolt off, and this will slide out. You'll have to jiggle a little bit to get it right off. And then that is how you remove the exhaust. Pretty simple, pretty quick, pretty easy. All right, got a quick recap on pulling the rear wheel off on the BMW R1200RT. It's a 2014. Pull the exhaust off, pull the side bags off for a little bit easier access, and then the tire's going to come right on out of there. And let's get started with the wheel. All right, so first is first, we've got the adapter that I've made that'll hold the wheel in place. The wheel sits on the rack here, and we have a tool to deseat the bead. The first thing we need to do is take that valve core out right here, take the valve stem out so that it'll relieve all the air. One thing that you're going to find with these bikes is of the OEM tires is that they really want to stick to those rims, so loosening that bead, just be careful, do a little bit at a time, and go around and use a little bit of Windex to spray the tire down, and that way the Windex will get down into the rim, the bead of the rim, and it'll help keep that bead, or help deseat the bead. Deseat the bead? Yes, something like that. Let's do that now. So you guys can check that out right there. And basically I'm just going to run around the bead, Windex all around that bead. You do want to be careful. Right here there's the air sensor for the tire pressure sensor is right here. So we're going to do that part of the bead last. We'll start here, and we're just going to do a little bit at a time. I'm not going to try and take the bead completely off all in one shot, just a little bit. And what you can do is you can spray some in there as you go, turn the wheel a little bit, and just do a little bit more as you go around. That's going to get that Windex down into the rim. Okay. Now we're ready to take the bead off. I'm going to spray a little bit more. It's important to do just a little bit at a time, because if it's really tough to take off, this is just going to make it easier. Just slide around just past the valve stem. Should be on this side. Then we want to take deseat the bead. There's that side. Don't go all the way around. We have that completely off. And we do the same on the other side. Okay, that one's done. All right, now that we've got the bead completely unseated on both sides, what we want to do is we're going to start by taking the tire off this side first, and so it'll just pop off that side. And this is where your tire pressure sensor monitor is, right up underneath the wheel there. We want to start on this side. We'll take it off using a bunch of tire irons, and we'll work our way around to the other side. Okay, you saw me use a bunch of tire irons, pop that off. I use this to hold down the one side so that the bead goes down into the center of the rim. It makes it a lot easier to pop those off. Came off very easily. I ended up using 3 tire irons, I think, and it just makes it simpler for me. And now what we want to do is we're popping this side up over the tire monitor, which you can see right here. There it is. And so it's up above that, so we don't want to break that. And what we're going to do now is pull the tire off the rest of the way. All right, now that we've got the tire off, what we want to do is inspect the tire pressure sensor, and it looks perfectly fine. And then looking around the rim, we've got some wheel weights we want to take off, so we're going to take those off next. That's what we're going to use. That you can use goof off. This will be the first time I use goo gone, but basically take the weights off using like a plastic spatula, something like that, and then spray some of this on and wait for it for a little bit, and then scrape it off with a little plastic scraper. All right, what's the next step? So we've cleaned up the wheel, and now we've got the tire set up here. We want to look for the rotation of the tire and the rotation of the wheel. On the BMW wheel, it's got an arrow, so you can take a look at that arrow there. That is pointing that direction. That is the rotation. And the tire has a rotation somewhere up there. It is a rotation there, and it says that way. So this is the wrong way. So I'm going to spray this down with some Windex to lube it up. I normally use a tire soap, but seeing that I'm doing this at home, I just want to use the things that are at home. So this is Windex. So we'll spray Windex on here. I'll turn it up over the other side, and we will shove the wheel down on there to get it started. Now, if you saw, I did two things. I sprayed this side with Windex, and then I sprayed the inside here with Windex. I don't want too much water in here, so I'm gonna actually soak that up right there so there's not a puddle of water in there. You don't want water in your tires. You don't want liquid in your tires, and you don't want beads in your tires. All right, let's get that going. So that's the first piece. We got that on there. First side's on. Now we will use tire irons to put the rest of it on. All right, so it's as easy as that to get the tire on. And now what we need to do is fill it up with air. So we're going to put the valve stem back in. We'll reseat the bead. You can spray a little bit of more Windex around both sides so it seats really easily, and then we'll balance it. All right, guys, now that we've got the wheel on the wheel stand here, and you see how my little spacer's working, and you let it come to the wheel come to a rest, and then you're going to want to mark the top of the tire here. That is the 12 o'clock position. After it settles, and you mark that spot, and that's where you're going to put the weights, because that's the light side of the wheel. Then you can use your old wheel weights like that and tape them on to make sure how many weights you need, and then use a little rubbing alcohol to clean up the wheels so that the weights will stick. And we'll tape those on and see if we can get that balanced out with the weights we have there. If those weights work out, then we'll use new weights and stick them on permanently, semi-permanently. All right, guys, it turns out we needed 4 wheel weights, which is approximately the same weight as that tire pressure sensor on the other side. So this is a very well balanced tire, so that is fantastic. We are done. We'll mount this tire back up and be ready for the front. Our finished product. We got the bike back together, the bags on, we put the pipe back on, and the wheels. So all right, it's time to start that front wheel. And if we take a look down here, we need a few different tools to I turned the bike around, of course, but a couple different tools we need. So we're going to need a jack to actually just prop up the front of the bike a little bit. We don't have to jack it up with a lot of pressure. It just needs to be, there's enough, just a little bit of force will bring the front wheel off the ground. So what I'm using a jack, and then I'm using a little towel up here to go underneath the engine. It doesn't take a lot of pressure, so I'm not worried about denting anything or doing anything like that. That's perfectly fine. The next step, or tools you need, let's see, let's start with this. This is a sort of a little special tool for the axle nut. That's a 19 millimeter right there, and that goes on this side. This comes with a little cruise toolkit that I have. It's kind of nice to have that little one. On this side, it's going to be a 20 millimeter, I believe, socket, so we'll be able to use that. And then, what else do we have? We have a, this is a T30. That's going to be used for the ABS. This is a I believe that's a T40. So when I say T, that's the Torx fitting. And so T42, T30. We've got a 13 millimeter again. That is for the brake caliper. The brakes have to come off, so you can not take calipers, but the Brembo brake pistons have to come off of there. This is the 19 millimeter here. I'm sorry, this is the 17 millimeter for the axle nut, and the 20 millimeter to go on the other side of that tool. Of course, we're going to need a tire pressure gauge as normal, and then I'm using two different size ratchets there, and we'll get to it. Guys, I want to talk one word about the order of things when taking the front wheel off, and one tool you probably don't have to have, just in case you don't have it, as far as the tools I laid out before. So first of all, we want to loosen a couple of bolts. So we're going to loosen this axle bolt here, and we are going to loosen the brake. Keep wanting to call these brake calipers, the brake piston. Loosen the brake bolts, and then lift it up with a jack. Then disconnect your ABS sensor, and you'll be able to just pull the brakes off and set them on side. Pull this brake off, set it on the side. You're going to loosen these two. These are T40s. You're going to loosen both of those. You don't have to take them out, you just loosen them. And then the axle is then loose. And so this is the tool that I was saying you probably don't have to have. This is a 19 millimeter. And really, you can slide this axle out by just sliding something in here and tapping it with your hand, or the rubber mallet or something like that, very lightly, and it'll just start sliding out the axle here. You really don't, it's not threaded in there. So that's something you really don't have to have. If you don't have that tool, you can still get this wheel off. Then can you get the wheel out without taking the fender off? Yes, you can. You just have to jack the bike up just ever so slightly, and turn the wheel to the right or to the left, and then you can sort of position the wheel back out of there. If you want a really easy job, just take the fender off. It'll make it come out a lot smoother, but this is a little bit quicker. Alright guys, there's a couple of things to take a look at. Once you have the wheel off, there is on the same side as the ABS sensor here, there's a little wheel spacer, and you're going to pull that off. On the other side, there is not a wheel spacer because the axle acts as a wheel spacer on that side. And just setting the spacer on this side will help you remember where it goes, but you also will recognize that if you take a look at that axle, it has little wear marks on the side of it from the dust cover, and so that can help you remember. But the little wheel spacer goes on the ABS sensor side. So guys, at this point, pretty much the procedure is going to be the same as it was with the rear wheel. Once we have it on a tire machine, or if you do this on the floor, that's fine, with your tire irons and all of that, removing the valve core, looking at the rotation of the wheel, looking at the rotation of the tire, pulling the weights off. And on this side, I actually noticed it's got 4 weights, which is basically the same weight as the tire pressure sensor. So this time around, I'm going to leave those weights on, and we're going to see if it balances. We may be close before I pull those off, and we'll check the balance there as we go forward. But other than that, it's going to be the same procedure as all right, a quick word about seating your tire and the amount of lube and lubricant that you need to put on there before you seat the tire. These are the Michelin Road 5 GTs. front and back, both same tires. On the front tire, that really, I actually had to unseat the bead one more time, throw some more Windex on there to make it lubed up enough for it to seat, and it was at about 50-60 psi before it actually did that, which is at the highest level I'd want to put in there to seat the bead. With tire soap, it's much slicker of a compound, and it dries sticky, so that actually makes it seat a lot better. If you do have tire soap, or you can get a small thing of tire soap, and I found is I could only buy it in like a gallon jug, so I wouldn't recommend going out and buying a whole gallon of it, but it's not expensive, and that makes it seat a lot easier. Just if you only have Windex, just put on a ton of it and make sure you get it on the inside of the bead of the last part of the tire that has to go on, and all around the bead. Just don't get a lot of water inside the wheel. I'm going to cover that in just a second, why you don't want water or beads. There is one thing I did not tell you about, that is you do need thread lock in the front. The ABS sensor bolt has a tiny bit of thread lock on it. Don't want that ABS sensor bolt coming out, so put a little extra, little new thread lock on there, and we'll be set. All right, job done. Let's take a look. We've got new tires on the bike. I'm super excited to go out and give this baby a ride. You want to be careful for the first few miles. Let the tires heat cycle and wear out some of that protective coating they put on them to ship them and store them, and then just have fun. I wanted to cover two things, and thanks for hanging out this long, because one of the things I talked about is, so we're balancing the tires, and a lot of people sell beads to put in the tire. You put in the valve stem, and those beads will self-balance the tire. And smarter people than me have figured out it's a really, really bad idea. And I think it's a scientist that does centrifuge research has found that when the rotating mass inside a wheel, or any object, spins at a certain speed, and there's lots of little things in there, would be like beads, that at a certain speed those start to collect, and they collect at the heaviest point, or the most, I guess the heaviest point of the wheel. And so even though under normal, say 30, 40, 50, maybe even 50 miles an hour, those beads sort of circulate throughout the whole tire and self-balance, once you hit, they found, at a speed of about 80 to 100 miles an hour, those beads start to collect again, and it creates a really dangerous scenario, just to have all those beads in one place. There are people that are going to talk about the beads wearing out the inside of your tire, overheating, superheating, and melting your tire. I just don't see it. Again, maybe they're smarter than I, but just the scientists with the centrifuge site, that's what they do for research, and they spin objects at high speeds, and at certain speeds they start to collect, and that's part of that research. Those guys are definitely smarter than the guys that are making the beads. Second option is a liquid-based fluid. Maybe it's a thick fluid that you put in the tire, similar to putting in a sealant that'll help seal for tire repair. Equally just as bad an idea to have that fluid inside your tires. It can collect and create weight at one side of the tire and make the tires start to bounce. In racing conditions, that's absolutely dangerous. Highway conditions under 65, 55 miles an hour, it's fine. I'd say if you have a scooter, it's a really easy, cheap way to do it. Anything that's gonna be going over 80 miles an hour, and I'd say don't attempt it. It's a bad idea. Of course, those are smarter people than me, so I just wanted to share that. And I think that's it for today. If you can hit that subscribe button, we got a lot more coming up. Hit that bell icon if you want to be reminded of those, and hit that like icon, or the big down icon. I'm sure you've got better ways of doing this than I do. This is sort of the home remedy way of doing it. I've done hundreds and hundreds of tires in my shop using a tire machine. It's certainly a lot simpler. And so here's for the last tidbit. So a lot of places here in California, the Bay Area, places are charging upwards to $100, maybe even more, to change one tire. There's a place here in Livermore, and it's place is called Motowrx. It's on Portola Avenue, and really good guys that own that place. They charge 20 bucks. It's 20, but you got to pay a $5 disposal fee, so it's 25 bucks per tire. You bring them the wheel, they change the tire for you, they balance it and hand it back to you. Just leave it in the morning, come back and pick it up in the afternoon. Sometimes they even do it while you wait, but it's easier just to drop it off. And for 25 bucks, do you want to do all that, or just pay the guy 25 bucks? I can tell you where I'm going to be. I'll be letting him change my tires from now on. But cheers. I hope you guys have a good time. If you want the address for that, I'm going to list it in the comments below, and we'll probably show a quick video of his shop. It's just a little small shop, lots of little accessories, things like that. You know, it's a really great service that he provides, so let's check that out.